Yeah, in that case, I think we can get started. Shane, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit? You can just say anything you like.
I have about 40 years of trading markets experience. We started in Knightsbridge in England around 40 years ago. So that's been our history, of been trading markets. Along the way, we've done everything from worked on compliance software for stock exchanges with a company called First Derivatives. I ran hostile takeovers for SoftBank out of my Hong Kong office. Yeah, anything to do with capital markets we've kind of touched on. About 10 years ago, I wrote a pricing algorithm for crypto kitties. And since then, 10 years ago, we have been in the crypto space. We've built our own chain for very specific types of business, financial business. We have clients already that we're running. Similar attitude that the idea of cross-chain borders is ridiculous. Some of the things we've done seem similar, but we aren't at the stage of having a smart contract that runs that. We run that back of the house the same way that a bank would run cross-border settlements. We run cross-chain settlements in a very similar fashion to that. So yeah, that's where we are. Exchange has launched in various forms. So the more serious version of the exchange is out in the next few days, the more commercial version. Predominantly our customers are issuers, custodians, exchanges, people who are funding assets via tokenization. So securitization via tokenization, they're the things that have been focused on. We're not focused on any of the hype products. None of the hype type NFTs. We use NFTs for a completely different purpose. None of the hype coins. We build ourselves crypto for grown-ups, and that seems to have done well, continued growing interest. I think that's a good summary of where we are.
Thanks a lot, Shane. Do you guys want to do your quick introduction again, Knut and Alex?
Sure. So I'm Knut Arne Winger. I was one of the founders of Coinweb as we started this in 2017. My background is hardware and software development, and I've been involved in electronic currencies since 1996 with eGold. I came across Bitcoin because I was in the space quite early, 2009. Unfortunately, I didn't buy a lot of Bitcoin or mine then, but I've been following it since, and then working full-time with cryptocurrencies since 2017.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I'm Alexander, and I've also been in Coinweb since 2017, and my background is computer science, so I've done a few different things. I worked on search engines, I did some startups on security. I worked for Google for many years, both on search and real-time communication. So I worked on the backend for this Google Meet, and also in the early days I was very interested in Linux. I distributed all the cryptography code in the Linux kernel way back. I was very interested in this sort of that people should have access to cryptography, and you probably know that it was illegal to export strong cryptography from the US back in the days. So I distributed that so that you could get a fully secure Linux kernel. I was quite interested in that. So I was also following cryptography, mailing lists and stuff like that. So I was also aware of Bitcoin quite early. But at that time, I had just started my startup for cloud security. It's like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for mining and spending time on this. It's interesting. But yeah, I started Coinweb 2017, and my title is lead architect. So I'm thinking a bit on, how this architecture works, and we can go into that.
Thank you very much, Alex. Yeah, the way we like to structure this is very open. So first, maybe we just like to ask you, what did you think about the Litepaper? Was it informative? What was
I read the Litepaper. Mark actually introduced me to this, I believe, in the very early stages of him starting on the white paper. So the Litepaper I found quite interesting. I think that the process you've gone through, I don't know if you started with the server, but that's where we started. We built our own servers and our own server architecture. The smart contract you've created is a smart contract that lives on your cloud. Does it live on a chain, or is it something that is running between chains? How is that smart contract running?
It's sort of both. It is similar to rollups. I use that as a reference often. So a rollup is basically some data that you put on the chain, and then there are rules for what that means. So the program is on the chain, and then it's a deterministic computation to compute the results of that smart contract. But the difference between having a smart contract in Coinweb and layer 1 is that layer 1 nodes are not responsible for computing the result. So they don't need to include what's called a state root into the block. So every computation that is done at layer 1, the miners or validators need to compute it, and then they need to compute the state, so the resulting values of all those computations, and put that into the state root. And then the state root has to be part of the mine block. In Coinweb, as in rollups and some other layer 2 systems, we embed all the data necessary to do the computations inside of layer 1, but then we do the computations outside of layer 1. So layer 1 doesn't know anything about what we do. But if you start from scratch, you start a new node, and the only thing you have access to are the rules, basically the Coinweb code, and the data on the blockchains, you would get to the same result as any other node in the network. So there is no outside information that you need. If you start the node and I start the node, we should get to the same result. So that's maybe part of the answer. So the next part of the question is, does it live between nodes? And it does, in the sense that Coinweb is divided into shards. And one shard currently is on top of one layer 1 blockchain. So one shard, for example, will execute based on the data on Ethereum, and another shard would execute based on the data in Bitcoin, for example. And if you just stop there, then it starts with it.
We lost your audio, Alexander.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It's still on and on.
Yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. One, how the smart contract moves between things, and two, how your cloud server works. So our cloud server was designed to be agnostic in relation to the external services it used, not reveal information to the external services, but route transactions in a way that was legal. So our focus was legality, but there's a possibility that your cloud is something that we would use for managing our backend. The growing politicization of financial markets sort of led us down the path of, okay, let's create a smart system that will spit back that transaction's illegal. It may spit back an alternative to the transaction. You can't do that transaction that way, but you can do it this way. Your system of being able to move between chains, what I understand of the smart contract and the server, could be very beneficial to us in terms of what happens in the backend. And I'm sure for many people to use that product to manage back-end processes, because this idea that we're all bound to chains is terrible, yes, and that has to disappear. It can't be part of the future.
Alexander, your audio is still not on.
Does it work?
Yeah, works.
That works.
Let me ditch this. So we're thinking like this, that the layer 1s, they are continuously evolving, so that there are always new chains coming out. And one of the really exciting things for me now are these chains that have availability proofs, so that you can prove that you have data stored on your disk, basically. And then instead of having, 100,000 copies of the Ethereum blocks, you can reduce that quite substantially because you have proof. It's harder to cheat. And then as that type of technology improves, then layer 1 bandwidth will improve. So you'll get faster chains, you'll get more data that you can put into chains. And then I guess what we are betting on is that you don't want to start all over every time. You don't want to deploy all over. You want to keep the network and the capital and your customers, and you just want to switch, like going from copper to fiber on your house. You don't want to switch laptops because you're going from copper to fiber. Yeah, I mean, we could potentially make a layer 1, but we don't do that because we think that the value is already there. There's a lot of value that we want to tap into, and that's probably where we can provide the most value.
Tell me about the Fiat rails. How does the Fiat rails interact with these things?
Yeah, maybe Knut, you know more about the Fiat rails details and the regulatory environment around that.
Yes. So there's already a project that's been built using Coinweb technology, parts of it. So this is used for payments and it's for data integrity. So you can secure some information about each individual payment and basically fingerprint it, and then you can prove that this information was available at the time of the transaction. So this it's a separate company called OnRamp, and there's a lot of synergy there. In addition to this, Coinweb has certain licenses that allows the Fiat rails. So it's a combination of using and cooperating with OnRamp, and also for certain functions, Coinweb will have the right licenses to be able to set this up.
So you're on your Fiat rails, you're capable of handling FX transactions as well. I was imagining that nowhere near as difficult as cross-chain stuff.
Yes, we have multiple currencies.
Yeah, very good. Is that an API that's available to other on- or off-ramp companies, or is there something you're going to try and keep in-house?
That's an API.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's a growing business. One of the companies we're working with here, they've spent a lot of money badly on buying a fork of a chain, but they actually have a very real and substantial on off-ramp business. What they did was they bought a really bad chain. And then managed it really badly. So I know they're looking for something along those lines of easy APIs to plug into for, yes, the Fiat rails. I think that's a very, very big market, that market.
Yes, so our strategy been to look at this from a bird's eye perspective and see where are the pain points that needs to be solved to have as much adoption as possible. And that's...
Ripple have done very well with that.
Yeah, yes, it's a lot of technical issues that have to be solved, but there's also business side to it and other sides that also need to be addressed. That's why we're also doing this.
So what language is your reactive smart contracts? What language are they written in?
We are developing the smart contract system gradually. The current state is that we're in permission state. So what that means is that we have fixed function kind of smart contracts. They're not fully general. And then we're building the VM simultaneously. But we are building them currently in Rust and then compiling it down to WebAssembly. And then we're using WebAssembly as the sort of glue between the client and that is executing a proof protocol between the node and the client. And that proof protocol, it can run on top of WebAssembly, but it can also run on top of sort of this fixed function. This validation or proof protocol, it basically just needs a sequence of operations that can be subdivided into smaller and smaller sequences where you end up with one sort of instruction or one operation where there's a disagreement between multiple servers. And then the client will execute that itself to figure out who is lying and who is correct. And that is quite easily accomplished by compiling down to WebAssembly because it's sort of a lingua franca that can run both on server and client. So that's what we do.
When you release that, do you think that's going to be something that's going to be a public use business, or are you going to put a fence around it for invitation only or pre-qualified, qualified type people to build contracts on?
Our chain?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that should be a public chain.
Okay.
Our goal is a public chain, but we're developing the product side and the technology at the same time, and therefore it's sort of a little bit closed and permissioned now, and then we're gradually opening it.
Yeah, it's expensive to open it. It's expensive to do all the work to open it. I'm not a...
Yeah, it's expensive to do all the development bottoms up and then build the product. So to sort of make it easier to use it as quickly as possible, we're going into this permission state where we are going to have products really quickly, but they are a little bit fixed function, and then we're going to generalize it later. That saves us probably 1 year of development. We probably get to market with certain products maybe 1.5 years earlier. So we can launch those products now instead of waiting to late 2023 or something like that.
Yeah, it's difficult and it's expensive and everything about it is painful, yes.
Yeah, and then there's also, we don't have all the answers. Even if we think we have a good system, there are certain decisions that when you take a long time to develop and you're not lean enough, maybe you look back and say, okay, that was actually a bad decision. So if you do a little bit more at the same time, you get better information.
Bad decisions are underrated. Sometimes those bad decisions teach you a lot, and your future decision making improves greatly because of the bad decisions you've made before. Sometimes
Hopefully we don't bankrupt the company with the bad decision.
That's the problem, the cost of the bad decisions, yes. That's the real problem. We're not going to go public chain. Public chains have issue with banks. We signed Bank of New York recently. Bank of New York rejected lots of chains because they were public chains. So some of the things were, so they said our products are quite specific. Some of our products are for banks who don't want to share everything. And the reality is of regulators and regulated institutions, their world is not a totally transparent world as yet. I think they're unlikely to change in the near future. So we have products for them. The idea of a public chain is good, but then, if you have lots of people building on your chain, you have to make sure that financially it's worthwhile and you don't create the Ethereum bottleneck where your users cost your users a lot of money to use your service, to use your chain, conduct transactions, because, there's such weight on the chain in terms of transactions. That'll be your next challenge after you build that public chain and open that API is coping with the bandwidth that it sucks up.
That's a good point. I think the Coinweb system could work on a private chain.
We're very keen to use some of those services. We think they're amazing. This type of architecture, which makes it easy for other people to live across those different chains, is going to be extremely popular, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But part of the reason for layer 2, there's two sort of breakthroughs that we have. And one is the scalability and the other is the interoperability. When you have a private chain, I think maybe the scalability is not such a big deal, because when you have a private chain, you can basically scale it up as much as you want.
And then if we have, one of the ones we're working on is a stock exchange in the Middle East, we can have a primary chain that runs. We can have a side chain that deals with custodians. We can have a side chain that deals with transfer agents. We can have a side chain that deals with compliance. So what we have, I've described as an armature, not a chain, because we split the chain. We split the chain multiple times, but still keep it in a single environment. So it's a very different thing. The rest of the world, as far as a public chain goes, the rest of the world doesn't have any of those capabilities. They've either bought something on Ethereum, they've written something on Ethereum, they're transacting on Ethereum, and they still need to be able to interact with the rest of the chain world, from Polygon to Bitcoin, etc. For those people, your service looks to be almost essential, yes. Just the pain. Have you guys ever gone through the pain of moving something from cash to BNB, from BNB to Ethereum and back again? If you've ever done that, yes, just one time, you'll realize how ridiculous the system is. And it's not delivering what blockchain promised was transactions that were faster, easier, simpler, cheaper than the bank. And the current process is none of those things, yes.
Yes, so that's very much what we also saw on Coinweb. We made it so that you can combine these chains. So if you have one property of one chain is a lot of liquidity, and then you have another chain that has cheap transactions, then if you can combine them and not lose the properties from decentralization that gives this value in the first place, if you can keep that, then we believe that's the way to will move forward.
So how far off a public chain do you think you are?
I would say that the plan is to get there beginning of next year-ish, or is that the public plan, Knut, or is it first half of 23?
Yeah, it's first half, 2023, yes.
After that, then you'll open up those services to the public.
Yes.
Oh, very good. That's pretty fast.
But we're getting the wallet out now, so that means that you can use the Fiat rails already in a short time for end customers. And then that means that you can transact, and then we'll have the tokenization platform, so you can make tokens and you can reach them down on various chains. So you can sort of make a token similar to USDT, for example, which lives on multiple chains.
Yeah, multiple.
And I think that is quite powerful to have those types of tokens, that instead of choosing between BNB chain and Ethereum, you issue your token on Coinweb, and then you can create a BNB chain token or a Ethereum token or an Elrond token or different platforms if you want to interact with those systems, or you can just interact at the Coinweb layer. I think that will be quite interesting for people, because I'm not sure if there's a reason to not do that. If you're starting a project and you say, okay, I want to do it on Ethereum because there's a lot of capital and liquidity there, then you could just as well issue it on Coinweb and then move all the tokens down to Ethereum. And at least you have the option of, you have a backup plan. You can then also use BNB chain or something else to get these crazy fees again.
Yeah, the tribal dedication to Ethereum is actually quite bizarre, yes. I don't know if any of the particular chains have such an advantage that they will dominate it. This isn't a VCR beta competition. I think this is a totally different thing. I think eventually they will all need to be interoperable.
Yeah, there's sort of a multi-dimensional optimization problem. So you have the fees, you have the centralization, you have the security, you have what's the standard deviation of the fees, what's the risk of them increasing substantially, do you have a guarantee going forward and stuff like that. So there's sort of a bunch of these chains that are the best, but they're the best at different parameters.
Different things, yes. As I said, there's a great deal of tribalism attached to these chains for whatever reason. And projects on one seem to have a perceived higher value than the ones on another. And the reality is that's simply not true. It's still down to the project. Yes, the chain it's on doesn't change that. The chain doesn't change the quality of the project. But in the minds of some, it seems to.
Yeah, but there are certain things like that, I think, also in the capital market. Let's say I do a startup and I do my startup in Thailand. Okay, I don't know the capital market that much in Thailand, but let's say I manage to go on the stock exchange in Thailand, I get the valuation. But then if I manage to get on the New York Stock Exchange, I get a totally different valuation. It's the same company.
Blockchains, one of the great things blockchain will do for the world is remove that distinction at a global level and return us back to quality of project, regardless of where it is. Then you have the other issues of, if you have a small business in America that can make it to market, my value is much higher than if I have the same small business producing the same returns in another country.
Exactly.
Yes.
Very interesting to see how a property of the technology, the decentralized property, also manifests directly in how innovation happens, because all of a sudden that property makes funding of innovation radically different. That's also the likelihood of one system being able to capture the whole market for a long time is much less likely when you have this decentralized funding.
I believe that is the case. Some of the great gaps we see between the world's economies will have to erode with true globalization. Yes, and true globalization in relation to stock markets, equity markets, capital markets is something that has not occurred.
Yes, and technology makes it much cheaper to replace the infrastructure.
So the server is something you guys built, yes, your cloud server?
Yeah, so it's since we're running on top of many chains and we are providing a lot more compute power, we are deploying our system on a cluster. So when you run an Coinweb node, it's a quite heavy system to run. But the idea is that if you're going to provide a lot more computational power, you have to have a lot more machines. Anyway, so that's quite fundamental.
All of the computing and all of the transactional computing you guys are providing?
A Coinweb node will do all the computation for the shards that it chooses to run, basically. You Ethereum, for example, or the Coinweb computations on top of BNB chain or Bitcoin. So you can choose that. But each of those will run as separate containers. We have lots of small sort of containers that together are deployed on a cluster to make it scale.
The nodes that people are building will be chain-specific nodes, but on top of Coinweb.
We run the clients that exist for the different chains. For example, for Ethereum, we'll run the Ethereum node. For Bitcoin, we'll run the Bitcoin node or client, etc. So that means that we run those networks, and then we run the computation that we do on top of it, everything in one cluster.
So you're running computations you run, you don't farm out any of that processing power outside of Coinweb.
Anyone can run a node.
Anyone can run a node. Okay. So if you look at Ethereum, for example, the computations that happen inside of a smart contract is replicated hundreds of thousands of times in different nodes. If you think about the energy usage, which converts into dollars, the cost of doing that computation hundreds of thousands of times, it's a substantial cost. So that needs to come from somewhere. So it's subsidized by the protocol, or it's extracted using fees, either or, typically, to make it profitable. What we are doing is that we are lifting the computations that are deterministic into a computation layer and using a different proof system, which means that we don't have to have 100,000 nodes to make it secure. We can have maybe 50 copies of the computations, or 100 copies. And that becomes substantially cheaper. Anyone can run a node, but we don't need to have this 100,000 nodes. So we don't need the economic incentives necessary to run 100,000 nodes. We only need it for 100 nodes. And that is going to drive down the price, because the alternative is that if you're doing important computation, you will have your main system and you will have various other backup systems in different regions and stuff like that. And then you will have your security setup and all that sort of stuff, which is costing a lot of money. Then alternatively, you have Coinweb. Maybe let's say we have 100 copies. I think on balance, maybe it will be roughly the same, hopefully cheaper, but it will be a public good, so you can very easily onboard and start using it, so that the initial investment is very low.
Yeah, that's the balance between those things in relation to node operators. I think is going to be a key part of success. Yes, because if the transactions get too expensive, then what's the point of doing it? It's easy to go to the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ethereum still have to overcome that challenge, but it sounds like you guys have thought that through fairly well, because it is the key determining factor of success in the future is your ability to deliver on the promise of blockchain faster and cheaper than a bank, yes.
Yeah. I think that the original idea, the Bitcoin implementation, is in many ways superior to Ethereum.
I would agree.
The reason is that you can't do much in Bitcoin. It's very slow. On one hand, it's sort of useless. But what they did, which I think was correct, is that they're doing the absolute minimum that you need in order to have a layer 1. The minimum you need is you need consensus, and you need a small payment system just to drive the network.
Yeah.
And then you need availability of the data. And Bitcoin did that really, really well. And then Ethereum came along, and there was an error in the architecture where you're putting on a lot of computation inside of layer 1 when it should have been outside. So you should have done the computation outside at layer 2, and they figured that out at around 2017, I think. They changed the roadmap to be roll-up based, and basically the smart contracts that live at layer 1, which makes running Ethereum quite expensive. On the roadmap of Ethereum, you can see that that's not the future of Ethereum. The future of Ethereum is in these roll-up systems, because they figured in 2017 that it was a wrong thing to do, basically. Yeah, if you move the computation out to layer 2, and the reason why you can do that is because it's deterministic. If you have the data at layer 1, you can use a much better proof system for deterministic computations than what you can do for layer 1. And if you do that, then running a node on Ethereum is much, much, much lighter. For Bitcoin, you can run a node on your watch, basically.
Yeah.
Your phone is way too powerful. You can run multiple instances of Bitcoin on your phone. Ethereum will get there in maybe 5 years or something, when hardware is more powerful than...
I think that's a change that won't come without some pain for the price.
Yeah.
So how are you guys funding? Are you going to do a coin at some stage?
So we've been partly privately funded, and also we're listed on several exchanges. And we already had a token sale pre-listing.
Okay.
So we're...
Okay, you're on CoinMarketCap. I see. Web, is that you?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're...
volume.
Yeah, there's some corrections need to be done to the listing there. CoinMarketCap, they request some information, but it's a little bit of a timely process to get it.
What extent?
We're on KuCoin, Gate, MECX, Bitmart, Bitrex, and a few others.
Okay.
So we launched at 5 exchanges the same day, and that was the last day of the year. So it was quite hectic for Christmas. I think I was sitting with my laptop at Christmas Eve with a chair next to me. There was not much sleep and just a lot going on. But it's basically almost been like that since we started. So one get a bit hardened after a while.
I see you on MEXC. We're a market maker at MEXC. We run market making at MEXC and a couple of others.
Okay, great. That's interesting.
Well, you're doing about $1 million a day. It's not bad. It's pretty good.
Yes, we had quite okay volume. I think also after the recent crash and developments, I think many token buyers, they're looking for more long-term project, not just flipping NFTs and so on.
They're starting to. In general, yes, people are starting to look for more long-term projects.
So I've thought for a long time that the market will become more segmented because
that's what we're doing with the bank in Switzerland. So as a bank in Switzerland, we're putting together our index. As I said, our new version's out in a few days. We're putting together our index of vetted, rated investment products that are on crypto. So projects that we think are real, we're putting on there, and everything else we're going to put over on Coinweb, but it's not going to form part of our exchange. So what we're going to try and do is create that NYSE, that blue chip type market. But we're working with the bank in Switzerland to do that. But we're working on a series of products from green bonds to token listings to, I'm not going to use the expression NFT, but things that are like NFTs that live on our chain that are multi-layered, limited edition tokens that serve as bonds. Yeah, we're working on those things. So when we're done, I'll show it to you, and if you're interested, I can put you on there.
Definitely interested.
It's a terrible, terrible world, the crypto exchange world, but not that stock exchanges are any better. You know, as we've seen with Robinhood and their margin call on equities was a ridiculous one. It should never have happened. Not possible that it happened if they followed the rules. Problem is these guys don't follow the rules. Much like DeFi, yes, we have this massive DeFi sell-off now, and it's because they have created smart contracts with some really dumb ideas. So the idea, if you give me one Bitcoin, I sell that Bitcoin, I take part of the money and go long 10 Bitcoin, and I take the rest of the money and spend it. That was really the base theory of Three Arrows Capital. That was their base theory. It was just completely ridiculous theory. Things don't always go up. Sometimes they do go down. And when they go down, what do? DeFi has taken a hammering from participant stupidity, where DeFi itself, you know, you've got the ability to build DeFi products on this smart chain. DeFi itself has a very, very good future if the products are built by financial professionals who follow, you know, the golden rules of banking and write reasonable investment products. There's a good future there, yes?
Yes, hopefully these events that happen and the problems will educate the market as a whole. So maybe it can also improve the traditional markets because people get more aware of the mechanisms.
That's the history of it. Back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, all you needed was a stupid name and a big burn rate. And Wall Street would give you lots of money, yes? And most of those guys are gone now. The ones who raised the money and invested in their technology and invested in future growth, those guys survived. And lots of them just vanished. I think we're going to
remember that.
Yeah, you remember that? Yeah, so crazy name, big burn rate, and people would throw money at you. Some people managed that very well, Bezos, and Bezos took forever to do it, yes? Amazon raised massive amounts of money and did not deliver for years and years and years, and then he did, was what happened at Amazon. They just kept pushing, kept refining the model until he got it right. I think that the cycle we're going through in the crypto market is not dissimilar to what we've seen on OTC markets before, the dot-com bubble, all those types of things. That's what people do, yes. The hype's there, lots of money comes to it. There's some reality in the hype, and it's the reality that survives.
So you were involved in CryptoKitties.
Yeah.
Are you interested in doing DeFi stuff? Because you're mostly in regulated business now.
We're absolutely going to be doing DeFi stuff, real DeFi stuff, real products that we are developing the base of now. So yes, we are interested in DeFi. I think DeFi has a very good future.
Yeah. Because we're building the ecosystem for Coinweb. There will be, there's all these projects that exist in all these ecosystems. But one of the things you get is crypto gateway. You can convert crypto from all these different chains into Coinweb in a fairly slick manner.
Yeah.
And okay, you have the Fiat rails as well, but there's a lot of plots of land that are available in the Coinweb space because we're so early.
I know, as I said, we've already looked at it. We've already looked at some of those solutions, and we think they're perfect for us. So James is the guy. I'm not the tech guy at all. James is the guy who'll be in touch with you about those, but there's parts of the system that we really like that we would use. I haven't had a look at the DeFi stuff, but we'd definitely be interested in looking. We are going to build out some universal pension products, some universal savings products that have purchases made and the bond is purchased directly from the bank rather than your first year's input into that pension fund going to the salesman. You'll be able to do that directly, take the bonds from the banks directly, and then at the end of your period, sell those bonds and take your money. Because that's another industry, that pension industry, especially expat pension industry, is one that's built around that model. Your first year's payments go to the salesperson. So if you're going into a 20-year system, your first year's gone already. If the firm can afford to do that, then probably your second year goes to the firm. So you're 3 years in before you're contributing anything to yourself. So being able to do that in a live fashion, because if you have $5,000 or $10,000, you can't buy one of those products. You need $250,000 or $500,000. But our arrangement with the bank in Switzerland is they'll be able to deliver part of that product to that account holder, and they will be the custodian. The bank will be the custodian, not us. We will be the gateway, and they'll be able to buy those things and use that as their savings, whether it's $50 a month, $5,000 a month, $50,000 a month. They'll be able to do those things.
Yeah, that sounds like a big market.
It's a very, very big global market. Pensions and savings products aren't available everywhere in the world. And the minimum, the entry level is too high for a lot of society, a lot of global society. The entry level is too high. So if we remove all the layers of staff from the process, we remove the salespeople, we remove all the administration, and we replace it with a DeFi contract and an arrangement directly with the bank, then that thing can be delivered over time, can be delivered consistently. If he doesn't purchase 1 month for it, he doesn't get penalised for it, and he's got a product there that's serving his financial needs.
Yeah, sounds great. Like in Vanguard for pensions.
Correct. But nice, simple. Even Vanguard, Vanguard with their ETFs, they kill people with their fees and their big offices and all those things. If we can do it without that, which is, another part of the promise of blockchain, then the person gets a real return on his money. And the guy who's in a third world country, maybe he can save $50 a month or $20 a month. He's still generating return that's significant for him, but he's not. It's not enough for the world's insurance companies to want to take him on. So he's being locked out of a financial opportunity. And continually, very large parts of the world are getting locked out of financial opportunities.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thanks for everything so far. If there's any final questions that you really want to know,
I'm going to let James come back with the final questions. We're tokenizing some cancer centres around Southeast Asia right now for their expansion. So he's on that call. I'm useless on most of those calls. I'll get James in touch with you guys. But some of the services we definitely want to be a customer. And we'll have a look at the DeFi stuff. If the DeFi stuff works, we'd be happy to use it. When the exchange is running, I'll send it over to you so you can have a look. And then if you want a list there, we'll put you on there. We don't charge people. It's a vetting process to get on the exchanges. It's not a pay-to-play deal. We have to like the deal, otherwise we just don't put it there.
Fantastic. Can I just have one final question, maybe just a minute on the Litepaper itself? Was it a good summary of the information?
I did like the Litepaper. I'm not biased because Mark wrote it. I did like the Litepaper. It was, even me, I could understand the process and the thought process of it. Creation. And I think that's important to convey rather than jump into the technicals, rather than jump into the crypto speak. Once people, and I found this a lot with my meetings, once people learn your objective is this thing, yes, that this is what the crypto world looks like and this is what the objective was supposed to be and your objective is over here, then they get an understanding of, okay, yes, that's the way it needs to head in, yes. All these multiple chains and all that nonsense, their interoperability is essential, just essential for the world, and more people building more chains, fantastic. But we don't need more people building more chains that don't talk to other chains. There needs to be that base needs to exist. So yeah, I did like the white paper. I thought it was
anything specific that you would like to have in there that you kind of missed?
The smart contract, I couldn't understand on the smart contracts if they were written on a Coinweb chain or they were written on another layer. That was the part I couldn't understand. I now know that they're built on Rust. We've used Java over the top of Rust for our stuff. I think we've done something else. But Rust is the language that everything pretty much needs to be built in now. But yeah, that smart contracts, how they work, how can I write a smart contract, how can I do those things? That would be the only thing I'd add in there because lots of people would be interested in becoming involved, I would say.
Great. Thanks a lot for the feedback.
Right,
and thanks a lot for the call. I think, again, was a great call, and I think we got a lot of valuable feedback. I hope you as well. And I'll put you guys in contact.
Yeah, put us in touch so we can become a customer. We're ready to go.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks,
Thanks a lot, guys.
Cheers, bye-bye.